Let's take a look at our next module, creating dashboards. And then we also still have the business intelligence. Those are two smaller modules. But yet again, the creating dashboards, let's take a quick look at that. We already saw dashboards, what it's about. It's, as I mentioned, a blank piece of paper, you could say, that you will create. And on there, you put the bits and pieces you want to publish on one of the TV monitors here at the entrance, some digital signage, maybe on a corporate website. Maybe you want to publish it externally to some of your colleagues, some of your customers, I mean. So you can also use Dashboard Gateway to publish that to the external world as well. So we've seen what it's about. We will create a brand new dashboard. Then we will configure our dashboard and basically put some components on there. And then we will also have a quick look at the dashboard container. The overview of the current components is only in there for reference material. It is actually a lot of slides. I'm not going to go through that. That's a little bit overhead. Let's consider that some reference material. So we are going back to the reports and dashboards interface. So let me pop that up. I can go there by going in a web browser to training.skyline.be. Well, /reports or dashboards doesn't really matter. And I need to log in since I didn't launch it from my cube. If you are going to reports, we need to go to the dashboards section, which is at the bottom there in the left-hand side menu. If you click on dashboards, you are yeah, true. There was a problem with Edge. Let me open it in a new tab page. So you can open it directly by going to dashboards /dashboard or /reports and just navigate to the correct space. Or you can also open it inside DataMiner Cube. Inside DataMiner Cube, no, I don't want to save that. You can go to the reports and dashboards, and then it is embedded in here. Good. My screen resolution. And then you can go to dashboards in there. So it's the same way. Either you have it embedded in DataMiner Cube or you go directly to /dashboards. We've seen that before, so what will we do now? We will create, and you can immediately do that as well. We can create a brand new dashboard by clicking on the new dashboard. What will happen if you do that? If you click on there, it reloads the page and nothing seems to be happening. That's because you need to scroll down and scroll down and scroll down and see we have lots of dashboards, and up there's one open. That's mine. So if you scroll down, you will see that one of those items is open. That's yours. So you should maybe give it immediately a training _ your first name or login name in there. What do we have in there? I'll immediately go back to my slides as well. So I clicked on the new dashboards and I potentially had to scroll down a little bit depending on how many dashboards you already have. You will find that new dashboard there. We can specify a couple of details there. Maybe, yeah, first of all, the icons. So we have the first icon that was the first icon, we actually had that as one of the questions, if I'm not mistaken. Next to that thing, that is the activate, deactivate icon, whether or not it shows up in the navigation menu. Then we have the edit icon to open up this panel, yes or no. On the right-hand side, we can save the dashboard, we can duplicate the dashboard, and we can delete the dashboards. So those buttons, save, duplicate, delete, are available on the right-hand side. Now, what do we need to specify? We need to specify a title and a description. The theme, or you can just leave it. There are some different theme possibilities as well. You can keep it organized in a folder. we've seen that before, that you can make a little bit of a folder structure. So if you open it up, you can choose one of the existing folders, or you can also create a brand new folder immediately from there. So the create new is in there as well. So if you want, you can put it in a training folder. The most important thing also next to the name is that layout. If you click on the layout or the three dots, you will see we have several layouts we can choose. And typically, they always have a header zone, a footer zone, and basically you choose how many columns you want. 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns. So we have that in here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have a special item, dynamic list. That's going to be my second example. And yeah, embedded component raster or more advanced things. We're not going to worry about that. I will just leave it default and yeah, leave it on 3 columns. I'm happy with that actually, so that should be fine. So we will save that, and that's going to be our first step to have a brand new dashboard. So I already clicked on new. I scrolled down, training BERT VA. If you want, you can put it in a folder training. I don't see any folder training, so yeah, if you want, you can create a new one. Training. The layouts, I'm happy with that. You can save, but you can also save and start configuring. So if I save, I just apply that and I apply it. Yeah. If you save and start configuring, if you click on that one, it immediately brings you to the blank sheet that I created. This is a brand new dashboard. It is a blank sheet that I created. How can I put something on there? Therefore, we need to go in the upper right-hand side. In the upper right-hand side, we have our actions, and that's what we will do. We will add and remove components. We will configure components. I will talk about feeds, and there are some general settings. So that's where all the editing is happening for my dashboards there. So my first step is done. I created a blank sheet with a name and a layout. Now I will focus on that add and remove and configuring components and give you a word on feeds. Add and remove components. If I click on there, you will get a side panel with a whole bunch of different components you can add. Since there are many components, we split them up in different categories. So on top, the blue items here are the different categories. So some components on aggregation, on alarms, on element information, parameter information, service information. If you click on something, you see the specific components on the lower hand side. You can just take one of those components and click and drag and drop them somewhere in one of the zones, a header, a column zone, or a footer zone. You can drag and drop, but actually you can also select an item, say add to header, and then it will also add it to the header or one of the components. So just with a simple drag and drop, we will be able to add that. And actually, I'm going to add as my first component on there, the alarm element, the alarm state for an element. So let's go in there and go to the add and remove components. And I'm going to the element category. And I want to add from the element category. So I selected the element category there. The alarm state of an element, that's the second pie chart. I just click and I just drag and drop it into the first column. What will you see? You have a preview, thumbnail, and it says that it shows the alarm state for an element not configured. So whenever you just drag and drop something in there, it might still need to be configured. And I actually have to just click on the configure button. And what happens, this item is being highlighted and it shows the configuration on the right hand side. So just to be sure you got that, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go to Actions, Add and Remove Components. I'm going to add the alarm count now. Just another one, another example. I drag and drop it onto one of the zones, and I see that it's not configured, and I can click on the configure. What happens if I click on the configure? I no longer have all the components on the right-hand side, but if I click on it, it changes from add and remove components to configure components, and it immediately selects the item that I clicked on, so I can also change it in here in that drop down which one is currently showing the configuration here. Let me just remove it again just to avoid confusion. Yeah, if you want to add and remove items, you can click on the small item in the upper right hand side to delete or duplicate it. So that's how you can very easily just add components. You browse through all the different components, you find something interesting, you drag and drop it on there. You can still reshuffle it, so you can still move it around once you dropped it on there, so you can just do that very easily. As I said, you have that menu to do a delete or a duplicate. The info, yeah, not that important. Yeah. To configure the component, just click on the configure. Note you can also go to the configure section and then select your component from that drop down, or you have it also in the context menu there, but we just go to the configuration. Now, if we want to configure that pie chart that we added on there, I mentioned to you that typically when we create a dashboard, during the viewing dashboards, we typically create a dashboard not hard-coded to my Philips device, but a little bit like an automation script. We make it linking to a Philips device. Which one? Well, you can choose. You can basically run or apply your dashboard on my Philips device, on my main, then on my backup, then on yours, then on yours. So I can easily apply a dashboard on any Philips device. So it's a little bit like the dummies, you could say, we just saw in the automation script. Also in here, we work with, you could say, dummies, but we call it in here feeds. There is something feeding your dashboard. I was almost going to say automation script. So something is feeding your dashboard. And if I go to the configuration of my pie chart that I just added, you will see that it needs a feed that is an element. It needs an element feed because it's an element pie chart that I added on there. It was not a service pie chart, it was an element pie chart. So it will need a feed. That's the feed section on top, and below there you basically have a whole bunch of other options. A little bit like, does it show the legend? Does it have shadow? And a little bit of visualization stuff that can be tweaked and modified. So the options, you can play around with that. The most important thing is that feed, I need to link it to something. Now you will see that in the feed we have two things. We have an actual feed that I will be able to create by clicking on the new button. That's where I will click on immediately. But you can also choose an element and hard code it, you could say, to an element. Then you're not using the feeds, you're hard coding a dashboard to a specific fixed element. You will never be able to change it. We're not going to do that. We'll make it as it should be, and we'll make it fixed linked to a feed. Now I will immediately, for my pie chart, click on there. I will click on new feed, and it will immediately for me create a brand new feed, and it will have the name element feed. And if I click on the edit, you can open it up and you can take a look at it. A feed has a name, it has a user selection and a fixed selection. The user selection is the most important thing. That's what you will ask to the user. An element feeds, what do I ask to the user? Well, yeah, an element. And you will have some other things you can ask to your user as well. A fixed selection is actually to narrow it down and filter a little bit, for instance, on the protocol or on the view or something like that. Let's try it out. So the first step was our pie chart. We dragged and dropped on there. We clicked on the configure. We are now in the configuration of the components and the alarm state component more specifically. And what we need to do there is we need to focus first on that elements thing there. And we will go for a brand new feed because there is no feed yet. There was a new dashboard. We click on new. What happens? It creates an element feed. But I want to check it. I want to take a look at it. So therefore, I click on the edit and it opens up the feed. It has the name element feed and I'm perfectly fine with that. It will ask the user selection, an element. I'm perfectly fine with that. The fixed selection, I don't want to worry about that now. If you want to change something to it, you can change the name. You can save the feeds then. And now I want to basically check my result. And how can I do that? I can do that by first of all scrolling down, making sure you apply, because actually your dashboard of the changes are not applied yet. It's still not configured. Let me first click on the apply button. Now you will see it's no longer gray and not configured. It's automatically going to show you something. And if you want to preview, there's also a convenient preview button there, because that allows you to keep your window open and just have in a pop-up your dashboard popping up, as I have it here. And it pops up and it says like, yeah, I need an element. Indeed, an element feed. There's no selection, no default selection. So I can go and choose my, not BERT, but training BERT VA. I don't see my element. It's starting with, I was confused there. Thank you very much. BERT VA, and I'm gonna go for my main device. So you can select your device, apply, and you will see that I have been 100% of the time in alarm. Didn't do a good job. Let me close it. The preview. I have it. I have seen it. I want to extend it, and I want to also see not only the percentage of time I have been in alarm, I want to see how many alarms I have generated. So let me just add another component by going again to Actions, Add and Remove Components, and I'll drag and drop the first pie chart within the element configuration, the element category, alarm count elements. Let's take the alarm count element next to my first one in the second column. And now if I go to the configuration of that one, I no longer have to create a new element feed. Be careful, don't create a new element feed. Use your existing feed that is already there. By going to Actions Feeds. I'll show that in just a second as well. If you created two feeds, you can go to Actions Feeds, and there you can delete feeds. You can have an overview of all the feeds. So I applied also that same element feeds to my alarm counts. I first apply and then click on the preview. Make sure you apply, always apply. And you can see that I have been 100% of the time in critical, but I generated 22 criticals and 11 warnings. Let's check my backup device. How did I do on my backup device? I'm just curious. It has a little bit of green in there. Oh. And only 16 and 7. So I was a little bit less active on my backup. I have been more active on my main. Okay, so the first step was creating the dashboard, basically a blank sheet. The second step was add and remove components, adding some objects on there, like the pie charts. Whenever I wanted to configure the pie chart, I had to create an element feed, and I'm reusing that same element feed when adding new and new and new items on there. I already added 2 pie charts on there, and I also added a alarm list on there. What else is available there? Some different options in there. We're not going to go to too much detail there. Things like a fixed width, the title, the display. So normally, I can show that to you quickly. So you can give it something like, if the slices are filled, yes or no, shadow, yes or no. The title, display the title and say something like, okay, that's the alarm state, etc., etc. So you can play a little bit with the style. So you can see I have now 2 different items, one with a title and without a fill of the slices. The other one is just the standard without the title and with the fill. So you can play with those different visualization options as you wish. Also, extra CSS can be added to do some more funky stuff. If you would have created 2 feeds by mistake, you were able to go to the feeds to correct your situation. So there were some people that by mistake created yet another element feeds. So you can always go to actions and go to feeds, and there you have an overview of all the feeds you have. I only have 1. If you have 2 and if they are not being used, you can also delete them. There's a delete icon next to it then as well. So you can open it up, so you can open it and close it to take a look at it to further fine-tune it. Actually, maybe while we are here, the fixed selection, I kind of skipped it before. What is that? Well, you are able to filter it down on a view or on a protocol, for instance. So you could say, I only want the Philips devices in there to make the list shorter, and that's actually quite convenient. So you can go for Philips DVS 3810 production version. If I save that, preview, now it will only show IRD devices in there. You can also open it up and say like, my fixed selection, I want to have it filtering on a view. For instance, my BERT VA view. So only now you will be able to select devices from my view. So I can now more easily switch from my main to my backup because only my devices are in there. You can even take it a step further with advanced and have some element mask in there. For instance, star.backup or star.main, only the main devices. These things are even possible as well. Okay, so the feeds allow you to tweak your feeds a little bit that you created. Possible user selection, so we have a lot of things we can ask to user, so that's just an enumeration here of that. I'm not going to go into too much detail there. Here is the example of an element and filtered the fixed selection defined on a protocol. I did it on the Philips, and I also specified a fixed selection on the view, showed you the example on how that works. So it works a little bit as a filter, you could say. The general settings that we are looking at here, so that's in the actions. You have some settings, some general settings, not so important. The theme, the background image, you can use some background mode, and also pop up as mini dashboard. That is actually, if you go to that dashboard, it won't show it in the full UI, but it will show it as a small mini pop-up dashboard. So you can have like a fixed width and height to have it as a pop-up if that would be something you would like to configure. The text color extra CSS is also applicable on the settings here to change that. So you do have quite some possibilities to tweak your layout. I created a dashboard with 3 columns. I added a pie chart in there of the percentage of time and the number of alarms and an alarm list. Now I will create a second dashboard and I will do that with not the 3 columns, but the special layout dynamic list, because that's a little bit a special item. Let's take a look at that and create a second dashboard where we will play with. So I go to my training view, or the home or the training subfolder, doesn't really matter. If you go to the training folder, your dashboard will immediately be created inside this folder. So that's more convenience. Click on new dashboard once more. It has a new dashboard too, so I rename it to training underscore Bert VA de underscore dynamic. The folder training is indeed selected. The layout, I'm not gonna go with that 3 columns. I click on the 3 buttons next to it and I go and scroll down to that special item dynamic list. That's what I wanna look at because that's a special and powerful layout. Okay, I created a second dashboard, a dynamic one with the dynamic list as a layout. Save and start configuring. Brings me again to that blank sheet, and it says this dynamic list dashboard has not yet been configured. If I go to the add and remove components, the first thing we will need to do, because it's not yet configured as it says there, if I go to that add and remove, we have the header, we have the footer, and in the middle we have list item template. List item template, meaning I will have a list item, the template. I will define one row of a list, and it will basically iterate over a whole bunch of items. So why is the dynamic list so powerful? The dynamic list is so powerful because we are able to iterate over objects in my DataMiner system, and I can iterate over all our Philips devices and show you immediately a list of all the Philips devices with their audio output level, or I can iterate over all the services I have, or only the critical service, or all my SLAs with some key statistics and maybe some trend graphs as well. Why not do that as well? So that's what we want to achieve here. So we'll take a look at that on how to do that. But the first thing we will need to do is we will need to create a feed to iterate over. And that's why my dynamic list says it was not configured yet. It needs to be configured first by going to the feeds, and you will have not only the regular feeds there, but also a dynamic list feeds. And that's what we will need to create. Now, let's go back and let's say that we just add a regular element in there. Let's go for the element. I'm again in the element category. An element state LED. Let's take that one. What is the element state LED? I drop it in the list item template in the middle, not in the header, not in the footer, in that item template. What is that thing? That is actually the name of the device and a small LED with the current alarm state of the device. And actually, you see if you go in there, or if you take a look at the configuration, it says state LED for element from list. So I don't need to specify a feed for that one because it comes from the list. If I click on the configure, you will see the feed is actually dynamic list disabled. So I'm not able to change it. So if you drop it in the special zone, you could say, I don't need to configure it. While we are here, the display element name is okay. Yeah, no, okay, forget about it. So how do I define the what it's going to iterate over? Well, therefore, I need to go to that actions feeds, and I will have that special dynamic list feeds. So normally you specify the feeds in your item that are your component you add, except for this special zone. Because every component you drop in there will use that special dynamic list feed. So again, I will need to create a feed by clicking on the new. Let's take a look what it will create for me. Did I click? No. Okay, there it is. It creates a protocol feed. Let's open it up and take a look at it. So what it will actually do, it will actually ask the user for a protocol. Oh, I'm not happy with that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to ask the user for a protocol. I want to make my dynamic dashboard immediately iterating over our Philips devices. And I want actually the user to specify a view where he wants to see all the Philips devices from. So instead of protocol feeds, I'm going to go for view feeds. So the user selection is not going to be protocol, but that's going to be view. I'm asking the user for a view. And I can actually narrow it down. The fixed selection, I said it's going to be Philips devices. So I will, for the user, choose the protocol and go for Philips DVS3810 production version. So I created the new feeds. It suggested protocol feed, but I modified it to view feeds as the name. The user selection, view. The fixed selection, I narrow it down to the protocol Philips DVS3810 production. Okay, I save the feeds. It closes down the feeds, and then I click on save again. There's another save. I don't know. Just to be sure, I'm gonna have to save again. Okay, and I already added this first component. The only thing I did there was drag and drop the element state LED on there. I didn't configure anything on it because it immediately said from list. And now I configured that from list. So let's take a look at the preview. Actually, I can already see it shows all the devices here. And there is no selection on the view feeds. Yeah, you can see there's lots of Philips devices with lots of pages. So it's doing some paging by default here. So I can narrow it down on my BERT VA view. So then it will only show my main and my backup. Well, actually, let's do it on the training viewer. So we have a little bit more items in there. So we can see in the different pages all our Philips devices. Okay, if I now want to further enhance it, I can just go to add and remove components, and I can say like, oh, why not set the all monitor parameters there? I could add the pie charts, whatever. You just drag and drop in there. It's all going to be from list immediately, and I can immediately preview and see the items there. So the all monitor parameters shows in the tooltips which parameters are indicated in the small LEDs. So you can immediately see which devices are generating how many alarms. Well, actually what I want to show you is I want to show you the real-time value of the audio output level of all the devices. So therefore I will go back to the editing and I go to the parameter section, the parameter category. So the category DataMiner parameter, it has 14 items in there. So let's take a look. Generic real-time parameter. That sounds something like I need. So I drag and drop the generic real-time parameter in there. This one will say real-time parameter value for not configured of element from list. So it knows the element, but it doesn't know the parameter yet. So therefore I need to go to configure and I need to give a little bit more details. The feed is dynamic list. Yeah, element from the list. Yeah, parameter, other value. Let's open that up. And let's scroll down and let's go for my audio output level. In the options, I'll display the parameter name, display the parameter value. I have no clue why this checkbox would not be enabled by default, but I find it very interesting to display the parameter value. So I'll display the parameter name and display the parameter value. Note you can also, and that's also an interesting one, display the set parameter control. So you decide whether or not the persons using this dashboard can change the parameter as well. I want to play with it, so I'll immediately add it on there. So I also activate the display set parameter control. Let's apply and preview. Always apply, and then I'll preview, and I'll take a look at it. So I have my devices in there. I can see this one is green. So let me also put my backup on 6, for instance. 6 and go. Note it takes a while on the device, but also note that this is real-time updating, but it's on a polling basis. So it might take a few seconds or a second longer than real-time, you could say. So that's how you can easily, where's E? 6. Maybe one last example. If you want to also add a trend graph, how can you add a trend graph to that? Actions, add and remove components. My final example here. If I scroll down, what do I have there? Histogram, no, trend parameter. At the bottom here, I have trend parameter. I'll drag and drop the trend parameter on there. If you're not able to do drag and drop, you can still enable the checkbox and say add it to the list item template there. Okay, I added a trend parameter element from lists. Yeah, of course, parameter not configured yet. Of course, the parameter, I need to configure it again. So I click on the configure to go to the configuration. There's a lot of options on trending. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this. You can make groups and add multiple parameters in there. But I'm just going to go for the default thing, you could say. So the feed is the view feed. It should normally select it by default. From feed and then the other parameter, I'll take the audio output level as well. It doesn't change that often, our audio output level, but still, then again, I want to add it. So the parameter to display, I said use that view feed from our dynamic feed, the element from the feed, of course, and the parameter my audio output level. It's going to show it for last 24 hours. I mentioned during the introduction, the first one in the operator part, you choose what people can do. If there is a bottom chart, yes or no. That's the like to zoom in and to move your graph. Show a save icon. I don't want them to be able to do that. Parameter checkboxes, we don't really need that. And let me see. Let's just check it out, how it looks like. Apply. And preview the dashboard. So you can see it loads all those trend graphs, and you can see who has been a little bit active, yes or no. It's the last 24 hours it shows. You have a range selector. I thought I didn't apply that save icon there. Or was it the inverse? You can also tweak a little bit the width and the height. I see the height is a little bit too high. So let me just tweak that so that the width, the fixed height, I'm gonna maybe put it only on 120, not too high, more like a small thing I want. So you can tweak that over there and show range. Show the range selector. I'll actually will remove that. And the show save icon, I'll remove that as well. Apply. And preview the dashboard. So now I made it more narrow, a little bit less high, and I removed also the range selector, so you can no longer switch between 24 hours and week. And the save icon I removed as well. So that's how you can tweak it, how it is being visualized. Note that there are some additional options in the actions, some additional settings. Some dynamic list settings, and just to show you immediately, because I now feel that I need to have the horizontal grid lines and alternating background color. I feel an urgent need for that. I apply that and I preview that. I'll come back to those settings in the slides in just a second. So now I have an alternating background color and a line between there to make it a little bit nicer split up. So that's how I can create a dynamic dashboard and tweak it a little bit in terms of layout. I'll immediately come back to my thing that I did now in the very last steps in my slides. So what did I do? I created a dynamic list. I added one item on there, and I went to the feeds to define that view feeds. It's in the slide here. What I defined. I defined a view feed, fixed selection, the user selection view. The user selects a view, and the fixed selection is a protocol. I went actually for not the Microsoft, but for the Philips device, because we can change the setting there. The dynamic list options, I just quickly went into the list options or the general settings where I have a section for the list options, and I changed this visual appearance. Note, you can iterate over elements, but you can also iterate over services, SLAs, business intelligence. So you have different items you can iterate over. Also, table rows. If I have, for instance, a table with all the interfaces, all the ports of a Cisco, you can iterate over all the interface ports and show for every interface port if the admin state is okay, if the trend graph of the RX and the TX, how it was in the last 24 hours, and iterating over this kind of table, you could say. Elements is, of course, a very popular one. You have a couple of options, only active elements or a minimum alarm level. That's also interesting, also with the services one, because I'm not interested in the Philips devices that are doing a good job and that are in normal states. I only want to see whenever they pop up an alarm. So the list actually filters on the minimum alarm level, and you could say starting from major and critical, it shows those services, or in this case, elements here. So that minimum alarm level is definitely something which is very useful as well. You can also iterate over parameters inside a device, for instance. You can iterate over redundancy groups, not that important, I guess, and services. That's definitely one interesting one. An overview of all the services, or maybe only the ones that are in alarm, is a nice one. You can have some masking filtering, a mask and a star filter, star question mark filter. I played with the visual appearance. What is that? Rows per page and row grouping. You saw that it was paged because as soon as I have more than 10 Philips devices, it was showing paging. So you can define how many there are on one page. It's by default 10 items, and then you need to go to the next page. If you don't really need the full width, I already need the full width, you could say. If you don't need the full width, you can use that special item there, row grouping. Row grouping allows you to, instead of having one item on a row, having two items on a row. A little bit a special feature there. So that's my dynamic lists that I created. So I created two dashboards. I created one dashboard just showing a couple of pie charts and some alarm list of one specific device, so I can apply it on Philips A, B, or C. I can choose. My second dashboard I created was one which is dynamically iterating over all my Philips devices in my view or in the training view. I can choose the view. I feel they are kind of related to each other, so I can actually create a dashboard container to combine them together. How can I do that? Very easy. Only one thing you need to do is you need to specify a name and combine dashboards together. And then we will be finished. So the new dashboard container. So before we create a new dashboard, if we create a new dashboard container, we just give it again a name, training underscore VA underscore container to make it clear. There's no layout to choose, and there's actually no start configuring there. You cannot go there to start configuring. There's nothing to configure. The only thing you can do is you can include existing dashboards. And I created two dashboards already, the BERT VA, so I'll add that one. So this one is added, and I can create this, add a second one, my dynamic one. So now I have two dashboards that are in there. And I can add and combine basically a bunch of dashboards in a dashboard container. If I save that configuration and I go to my container, there it is. Yeah, it's asking a feed for my dashboards that is shown in here. So what is shown here is just simply two dashboards. I have my container, and the container includes my first dashboards and my dynamic dashboards, and maybe I'll apply that on my BERT VA view. So here I have my dynamic lists iterating over my view, and here I have my dashboard showing the details of one. And actually you can link also, if you click on there, that it goes to that dashboard. But we're not gonna do that in the examples here. So a dashboard container is very simple. It's just giving it a name, adding some existing dashboards there at the bottom, and you just have a list of dashboards that you are adding here in there. Simple and straightforward. We've seen the result in our demo here. Those are some tab pages that are being shown there at the top. Then there's a whole series of examples. I'm not going to go through all of them. Aggregation components, alarm lists with a whole bunch of tab page controls, history alarms, sliding windows. You can choose the columns. Many things are possible. Visual overview components as well. Remember the visual overviews, you can take a snapshot, add it as a component in there. That's a nice one to add as well. All monitor parameters, data display, state LEDs. We've added some of them on there already. Histogram, set parameter, spectrum, thumbnails. Many things are possible. The sparkline, statistics. As I said, I'm not gonna. Yeah, Google Maps can be added in there as well. A group component to make special layouts, an image component, an inline frame to add another website in there, video thumbnails, many items.